Okay, so today is April the 2nd, and this video is for April the 3rd. And we have the privilege today of talking with Peter Van Runt and Rena Iliades. I hope I said that right, Rena. I think I'm finally getting your name correct, or at least close. At least close.
Close. Almost perfect.
Well, I always think of the Iliad and the Odyssey when I see your name, which I read a long time ago.
Well, you just add an S and that's it. You got my surname.
Was that a long time ago or a lifetime ago?
Well, these days, who knows?
Exactly.
Peter and Rena were both during the month of March in Cirebon, or Cirebon, however you want to pronounce it, on Java with Mr. Sugih, or Mr. Sino, as he's also known. And we're having a conversation today, and this is going to probably go longer than my usual even half-hour to 45-minute conversations. We're going to shoot for about an hour, but we're not going to hold the time to be that critical because we want to cover some ground here and hopefully answer some of your questions. And yesterday we did a wonderful interview with a couple of ladies from Florida, from my home area. But Peter, of course, and Rena are both in Australia. And we had the interview, and they were all Australian delegates, including me. And Peter was the one that invited me initially to join Swiss Indo and to become a delegate. And we had to keep it quiet. This is the first time we will be able to have an open discussion about Swiss Indo that can be shared with the public. And I think all three of us here are very happy about that. And I'm sure there are a lot of other delegates and a lot of other people.
Thrilled. That's an understatement.
Yeah, absolutely excited.
We had to keep things under wrap because that's what we were told to do. And we did it as long as we could. But Mr. Sugih wants the information out now. So I believe most of, if not all of the restrictions have been removed. So we're able to share freely, or at least a lot more freely than we've ever been able to do before. So I'm going to start with Rena because you, in the conversation yesterday, you talked about some of the protocols for implementing seacs. And I actually want to start there today and have you just give that thumbnail like you did yesterday, because not everyone is going to be able to watch the blog talk video because there was some interference and words were missing and syllables and stuff like that. So Hopefully this will come out much more clear. And I want you to just go ahead and sort of recap what you covered yesterday. I know you can't cover the whole thing in detail, but what you did yesterday was perfect.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll just, this is a document that we all created. We all participated in the creation of this particular document. It's called the Interim seac Paradigm. The operative word here being interim. It is very much an interim document. It's a starting point. It's a bridge, and it always has been. And it was created with the current situation and the current status quo in mind to help assist the easiest transition that's possible. And, you know, this is open to change, and it was created with that in mind. So there's five main stages. There's a lot of detail here, but to actually go through the entire document, I'm actually looking at it now. To go through the entire document, which I've done on 2 separate occasions, I think a couple of times it was with a lot of people from different delegations, but I've also gone through this document with everyone on the Australian delegation, and it takes about 3 hours to go through it in detail. It's only 13 pages, but there's a lot of detail in it. So the 5 stages are the facilitation stage, the education stage, the establishment stage, the maintenance stage, and the improve stage. So facilitate, educate, establish, maintain, and improve. The facilitation stage is basically the stage where everything that needs to be done in order to repurpose something. So it's sort of like the pre-planning process. So everything is taken into account for either the repurposing of something that's in existence or the creation of something new. So this is the implementation or creation of a CVAC. It's the implementation process. So pre-implementation process. So everything is taken into consideration. And I mean everything. That particular area or country's culture, what's currently in place, what the landscape is, all of that is taken into account at the pre-planning stage. The second stage is the oath keepers are put in place, and the oath keepers are those who are going to uphold service, and oath keepers are also those who swear an oath and bond to the people that they're going to serve through the CVAC, that they will remain, the oath ensures that they will remain transparent, accountable and responsible for absolutely everything, and I mean everything, that happens in their CVAC. So that's the facilitation stage and the establishment of the oath keepers for that particular CVAC.
And the mentors there's also a mentoring process. So every CVAC project will have the appropriate mentors or specialists come on board to help guide that project. So that's also a stage where the mentors will be assigned and oath and bonded to the project, and so that's an integral part, is also, identifying the stakeholders and identifying the right people to be mentors for the project. And those are obviously the initial stages. So I'll let you carry on, Rena. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's actually really, I'm glad you mentioned that, because what I forgot to say right from the very onset is that central to all of this, and if you could see the document, you'd see that there's three sort of overlapping circles. And this is central to those 5 stages. They're circular stages. They're not linear stages. They're circular stages. So it goes through that stage over and over again. And I think you've got this document, Ron, and it's
yes, I do.
It's page 3, right? So we're looking at the same page. We're on the same page. So central to that is create, protect, and preserve. So they're the underpinning principles that surround these 5 stages. So the facilitation stages, as Peter rightly said, is identifying key stakeholders in the process. What can be repurposed, what can no longer be utilised because it's been corrupted beyond repair. And sometimes you do have to start certain things from scratch. The second stage is the education stage. That's where information is provided to the public utilising all the available platforms. That's written media, internet, television, radio, all those sorts of platforms are utilised. And they're actually accessible through the Solutions Hub, because there's 12 CVACs that are established initially. And each of those CVACs, one of them is an educational learning CVAC, for instance. So there's no point in recreating, say, an education process if that's already been done in the education and learning CVAC. So obviously everything learned in that CVAC will be utilised, so that we're not duplicating resources, and so that the CVAC system of governance remains a living, ever-evolving work in progress. It's never something that's done, It's not like the current system we have now where, a department is set up and then they say, okay, it's done. No, this is ever evolving. This never stops evolving.
That's why most people don't get what we're doing, Rena.
Yes.
They don't get it because, and by the way, my picture's not coming up. You're still, when I'm speaking, it doesn't show me, but that's okay. people don't get it because they don't understand that it is a process. It's not a
Yeah.
finished product. And I've been trying to get people to understand that, but it's like, I don't know. It's like pulling teeth. It's worse than pulling teeth.
Well, you know,
Yeah.
if I was to use an analogy, I would say that CVACs are creators, value, asset center. And this has to be a living system. In other words, just as we evolve as human beings, and just as we evolve, so does the system that we use for governance. So just as we evolve as individuals, that's how the system will evolve. So it has to reflect life.
It's organic, not organizational.
Yes, exactly.
And we're just kicking this thing off. This is just the beginning, and I suppose that we are the generation that's got one foot in the old and one foot in the new, and then in that sense we're right where we need to be because we have to get from the old to the new, and it's a process that's been hugely evolving within all of us over the last 10 months as we've been working together, and it's only really just starting to come together as a vision now as the group finds its, togetherness and starts to see a common vision. And that's been quite a road, and that's had quite a bit to do with the old too. There's been plenty of arguments and fighting and all sorts of stuff going on within the delegation, with everybody coming in with their preconceived notions of how it was going to be. And we had to, sandpaper each other and rub off the rough edges. And, so I'm not going to sit here and pretend it was all, moonlight and roses, but we are getting to a spot now where it's coming together. And we are learning how to transition ourselves into a functioning, cohesive group. And that's part of our journey that we're making together. And we're not here to set it in stone. This is how it's going to be. We're just here to kick it off. Mr. Sugih and what Swiss Indo is going to do is it's lifting the lid off the limitations. That guy who's a free energy inventor, for instance, but he drives a dump truck all day long, and he comes home at 10 o'clock at night, and he's dead tired, and the wife and kids and whatnot, the mortgage, everything like that. He just doesn't have the time to do what his passion is wanting him to do, which is, that idea for that free energy machine that he's got in his head. And what we're going to do is allow that man to work a lot less because his energy is not being harvested, because 95% of what you make in terms of your energy that you put out, the money that you make in return, is harvested by government taxes, fees, charges, levies, commercial fees, bank fees, you name it, interest, mortgages. So this guy's going to work a heck of a lot less as a dump truck driver. He might work a day or 2 days a week, or not at all if he chooses to. And he can go down in his garage and he can go and stick his ideas together and experiment with his machines and come up with something and put it out on a solutions hub and start working together with like-minded people. It's about kickstarting this thing. It's about taking off the current restrictions, which are largely economic, and they're also obviously to do with our education systems, the political systems, etc. But the enforcement of it is largely an economic thing. And to be able to set people free off those chains, that's what we're trying to do initially, and then just take a little bit of a direction. So, if we have the basis of the law, the banking, and the Constitution for a more fair and transparent way of governance, and then with the solutions hubs, and we're still in the process of refining the definitions for the solutions hubs, and there's a work group that I'm working with at the moment, or beginning to work with, hopefully including some people from the Laos delegation that are going to be the actual first country to roll this out. And we're going to look at what's required for these solutions hubs to work and how we can make them work with current technology and expand them into future technology. And there's a lot of skill and expertise that we've got on board there. So all this stuff's not quite set in stone yet, but it is developing very, very quickly to the beginnings of a working model. And like I said in the radio interview the other day, Was it yesterday?
Yesterday.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, yesterday.
Time,
I know, I
budgets.
lose track of it.
Yeah, exactly. We're still refining that. We're still setting up the basics for that, but it's in humanity. Humanity is the CVAC. You are the CVAC. You are the creator. You are the creator's value asset center. And that's like a fractal design. It can be a person. It can be your family, your community, your city, your region, your country, or you can become involved worldwide. And that's what the solutions hubs will allow us to do, is put that transparency there. It's right. Okay, government. You want to be the Prime Minister? Well, the microphone and the camera are in your office, buddy, and anybody can see you on the internet, so to speak. Anyway, all your projects and the drafts of laws, etc., that your public service are working on, they're on the internet. They're open for scrutiny. It's not, here's your law fait accompli, and now try and take it to court to get it repealed. But we've already put it through, and we're controlling the courts because you're going to have common law courts that are juries of your peers. Common law is the law common to all, and we're all sovereigns within that system. And so you're going to have common law, and so the people are going to be the most important branch of government. That's of governance, I should say. And that's the difference between government, where your mind is being controlled, and governance is where you are taking care of business. And it's not for us to set it in stone and say, this is the way it's going to be forever, folks. No, I can't wait for that moment where I'm obsolete, where I'm the guy with 1 foot in the old and it's very close to the line, and 1 foot in the new, it's just across the line. And then all of a sudden somebody, 20 years younger, a lot smarter, a lot quicker, a lot more handsome, that's hard, but okay, than me comes along and starts running with the ball. That's the moment I'm waiting for. Because I realize that what we're doing is hybrid. It's hybriding between the old system and the new system. And it's trying to facilitate that quantum jump that we see is somewhere in the future, but it's not obtainable right now. While half the world is starving and the other half is, working poor, beating themselves to death for the man. We're not going to quantum jump like that. So it's a kickstart. That's all we're doing. It's a kickstart to shift the balance of power from government to governance to self-governance. There's a road possible there. And in order for that to happen, because it's really in the mirror of abundance that we recognize ourselves for what we are, because the universe is abundant, and your spirit and your soul and your body is abundant too, really. It's only in that mirror of abundance that you recognize yourself. And when you see yourself for who you are, then you realize that there's much more going on than just what's happening in your own scope of your own little life. And people who start to wake up naturally, as a natural consequence of that waking up, start getting an interest in something larger than themselves, larger than their family, larger than their community, worldwide even. So that's the movement we need to create. And we can only set up the pathway by which that can happen. And then when that movement starts to happen, when people start to engage in self-governance, government will become obsolete. Even governance will become obsolete, because self-governance is totally what's happening. You don't need a centralized system anymore. And it's up to humanity to do that. We're not a bunch of spiritual dictators that say, we're going to live this life this way now, and this is how it's going to be. No, please. We want to just cut out the rot, get rid of the corporate system, the corporate government system, and let people do what is in their hearts. Because I, for one, believe that all the solutions to all our problems exist, and they're out there in people's hearts. And they might not be the university-bred specialists that are called upon under the current system to do the job. They may actually be people whose natural insight, whose natural intelligence, whose soul insight, and whose total gut instinct has led them to the solution. I pretty much guarantee that whoever, invents an anti-gravity drive is not going to be a university-trained physicist. Could be, but I'd say those ideas are floating around in the hearts of people, and we do have all the solutions we need, but they're not in us. We're just here to enable those in whom those solutions exist to step up to the plate and to be able to become effective in making those solutions work. So we're not here to prescribe anything. And that's where I think a lot of people are perceiving what Swiss Indo. They look at it and they say, oh, it's a king, it's a hierarchy, they're going to be dictating, boom, and they just mentally shut the door. And
not only that, we don't have all the answers. You know, a lot of people ask questions as if we have the answers. We don't have the answers because there's no template for what we're doing. This has never been done before. Well, to my knowledge, it hasn't, and it certainly hasn't been done in a recent history, or at least in the last 200 years. So, you know, when you ask a question, ask yourself the question. Go and research the answer. We don't have all the answers. You know, we're making this up as we go along. This has not been done before. We don't have the answers. None of us are gurus. But what we do have is intent, and that's what's important, right? Intent is what's important, because I can give you a lolly, you know, but what's the intent of the lolly I'm giving you? You may perceive it as a good thing if I'm giving you a lolly, but if my intent is to poison you, then, you know, the lolly is not the thing you should be focusing on. It's the intent that should be the focus. And this is, you know, when people say, oh my God, it's the UN, oh my God, it's Agenda 21, oh my God, it's the New World Order, you know, look at the intent. Don't look at what's being used. Look at the intent, okay? And the intent is what's important. We all create our own reality. And if your reality is that, you know, I mean, you know, for the CVACs, for instance, you know, people talk about repurposing this and repurposing that. Well, why can't the UN be repurposed, you know, for its original intent? Because that's what's important, the intent.
Yep, absolutely right.
And you know, the banking system, why can't we repurpose that and get rid of all the harvesting that's happening in the banking system? Why can't we repurpose that to suit our needs, to be in service of us instead of, you know, harvesting our energy? So what's important here is not the how, but the intent, because the how will come with the intent.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And it's the intent of the universe too that's at play here, definitely, in how the whole situation with Sukarno and Kennedy got handled by the cabal, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, here comes this unassuming architect, and all of a sudden he knows all the accounts, he knows all the codes. There was an intent of the universe to do this, and that intent aligned with a bunch of people who resonated with it. The three of us being part of that bunch of people, but it's a very large group actually. Once you put them all together, there's probably about 900 odd people associated with this at the moment, and that's just the beginning. That's just the fractal, obviously. And as for what Rena was saying, well, my job in the future is going to be very closely related to rolling out humanitarian aid to go feed starving Africans, to even in Australia make sure that people have the basic necessities, because a lot of our remote and Aboriginal communities don't. Well, when you look at the situation in Africa, many of these countries that are very, very lawless, where you have little warlords running around, they've got the little jeeps with machine guns on it and all that sort of stuff, a repurposed military is going to come in awfully handy to roll out the basics to these people. You know, by the basics we meaning shelter, food, water, access to communications, access to their funding, because in the middle of nowhere where people are starving, there is no bank, so you're going to have to set up infrastructure and education for people. The United Nations has a huge logistical database and has amassed years of knowledge, and there are good people within the United Nations, as there are good people within all governments, all organizations, even the NSA and the CIA. There are loads of people out there who are supporting what we're doing. And once the payments are released and the paymaster changes, I'm sure the military are going to be quite happy to be helping to protect people who are handing out humanitarian aid that's barely needed, rather than going into countries like Iraq or Iran or Syria just to kill people and be killed for corporate gain and good corporate greed. they are oath keepers. Let's not forget that the military forces and the UN forces are also oath keepers, and a lot of those people are held back by very few individuals in very high places from doing what their hearts actually want to do, which is the right thing. And the same goes for our police force too. And there are a lot of good people in the forces. There are a lot of good oath keepers who would love to do what they've actually sworn to do. And it's about lifting restrictions and enabling them as well. So the United Nations is going to be an invaluable structure. And you've got to remember that this plan that was hatched by Mr. Sugih's ancestors and Mr. Sukarno's ancestors it involved the setting up of the United Nations just for that purpose. And in the last 100 years or so, the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and who knows all these other families, they have usurped that plan, and they've taken that plan over, and they've put the rot in it. And it's about getting the rot out, repurposing it, putting it back to what it's originally meant to do, which was to help us usher in an era of abundance and world peace. And it can be repurposed. The military and police can be repurposed and will be repurposed.
I guess, Rena, you need to continue the third. You already did the third part?
Well, I got to 2, so I got to educate.
Okay, go ahead.
That's as far as this always happens, on or offline. Perfect. This always happens. Okay, so stage 2 is the education stage. I think I touched on that and explained that. Stage 3 is the establishment stage. So that's the stage where the repurposing, all the pre-planning and the repurposing begins in earnest. So that's rolling out the existing structures, and putting in place those individuals to establish the actual CVAC. And then stage 4 is the maintenance stage, and this is a very important stage. This is a stage where everything is allowed to sort of settle. So the system is allowed to actually function, and improvements are made along the way to make sure that it's actually running smoothly, that it is actually serving the purpose that it is. That stage also includes a reflection stage, a stage where after some time, you ask the questions. If I knew then what I know now, what would I have done differently with this CVAC? And so then we go to the improve stage. So that's the stage where you plan on how you're going to create those improvements that you can make based on the hindsight that you now have, to then go back to stage 1, which is the facilitation stage. So it's almost like the second resonance of the same CVAC.
Yeah, resonant frequency.
Yeah.
And of course what you have is, as you begin to roll out projects, people go, oh, what's happening there? Oh, I can become involved in that. I have good ideas. So it's not just like we're doing it. No, it's the public that are doing it. And there's a new, at every stage, every revolution of the whole process, you've got new people coming in, new people with new insights, new interests, new ideas. So, and that helps to facilitate as well, because, sooner or later, everybody's got to be involved in their own self-governance, and that's where this is supposed to lead to. So it is a fractal system, and it's like vortex maths. It's a harmonic system where you're working on different levels of harmonics, and the more it begins to resonate, the more people, like-minded people, will become involved, and the better it's going to go. So again, it's up to humanity to roll with this. We're just cutting the chains once again.
Yeah, it takes the visionaries to see where we're headed and then translate that vision into something that people can relate to. And that's what Swiss Indo is doing. And as I said in the interview yesterday, and as I've said in some of my videos, it's not just the people in Swiss Indo that are creating this. This is being created in many groups all over the world that have very common vision to set humanity free from the chains and the bondage of a system that that harvests our energy and steals our life force from us.
I'm so glad you said that, Ron. I'm so glad you said that, because it comes back to the same thing again. You know, intent. There is so many groups that have the same intention. They're just going about it a different way. Nasara, Saint Germain. There's so many groups. They all have the same intent. Imagine what a powerful force we'd be if we all got together and stopped throwing stones at each other and recognise the commonality that we all have, which is the intent. You know, yep. This is not for me, it's not for you, it's not for a particular group. You know what? And I've said this 100 times. I don't think I've actually ever said it publicly. I don't care who does this. I don't care if Swiss Indo is never mentioned. I don't care if no one is ever recognised for anything that they've done, as long as the intent that we have is done. I don't care if the US takes credit for all of it. I don't care if the Laos government takes credit for all of it. I don't care. That's not what's important. It's what we need done is important. So let's forget about, you know, just stop throwing rocks, you know. Let's work together. How magic would we be if we all worked together? We've got the same intent. There's your commonality. You know, what else do you need?
Well, that's where breaking the chains comes in, because once the chains are broken, then that feeling of all these groups having to compete. You know, I've got a good friend who's a blogger and he makes his living blogging, and he gets very upset when somebody else comes in with a really good story, because that guy's going to be getting the donations for that week, you know, and his well's going to dry up for that week. And so they have to compete under the current system. All these organizations, all these groups have to compete with each other, basically, because they're trying to survive. They're trying to get a structure together. They're trying to make a dollar. Okay, so when we actually have trillions to throw at these things, you know, project complies with common law principles and is broadly in line with CVAC principles, you beauty, we can fund it. You know, it's beneficial to humanity. They already have a structure that they can work with. Excellent. Makes the job easier, and is facilitating those groups, but not only groups, not just the voting majority. You know, the idea is too that a one can get something going on a solutions hub. A single person can get a discussion going on a solutions hub, start getting people together, and take it from there, actually move it through. It can begin from the one, or it can begin from the group. We're actually in a situation nowadays where we have to get together as groups very, very closely and very tightly, because we do have to compete for funding, we do have to compete for space, and we do have to protect each other. Well, if that protection and that funding is there, then those groups won't be competing. So the natural tendency for any animal, let alone human beings, who's supposed to be the more advanced animal, is if there is abundance, you will cooperate. You know, if a tiger has had plenty to eat, it's not just going to go and kill zebras just for a laugh or just because it can. But if the food is low and it has to compete with the lions and everything like that, it'll do a heck of a lot more killing, a heck of a lot more quickly. And that's the way we all are. You know, when we're abundant, we're happy to share around what we've got with our friends, except for the psychopaths, of course. And when you're skint, you just go, and somebody comes up and says, "Hey, mate, can you lend me a $5?" You say, "Well, sorry, mate, no, I'm a bit low, mate. I don't have anything. Sorry." You might still have a tenner in your pocket, but you might say you don't have it. And that's just a natural tendency. And that's what abundance does. Abundance sets us free, and abundance leads to cooperation. When you don't feel like you have to compete with somebody, you will go and cooperate with them. And that's what it's all about. And that's who we really are. The universe is abundant. You know, stars are spewing out trillions of tons of all the basic blocks, building blocks of life. And out of that evolves, you know, solar systems, planets, biological life. You know, nature grabs a couple of elements, carbon and silica, and you know, so many, you know, beautiful forms have been built up out of those basic blocks. So how much diversity is there? You know, the universe is abundant. Your spirit is abundant. Your soul is abundant. And it's just that up here they've convinced you that you're not. And so you live in this competition and you live with the need for protection. You know, what are these borders about? You know, the need for protection. Because why? Oh, because there is scarcity. Because, you know, if we don't protect ourselves, draw a little line on a map and put soldiers around it to protect us, then the other guys are going to come and they're going to grab what we've got. They want what we've got. So all this stuff, all these borders, protection and all this sort of thing. And, you know, when you're traveling, it just gets ridiculous how many checkpoints you have to go through and body scanners and all that sort of stuff, all that paranoia. All that paranoia comes from scarcity. And once we start funding the right projects, once people are getting abundant and able to fund themselves if they need to, that whole sort of clenched fist of I've got to fight for what I believe in, I've got to preserve what I've got, and I've got to protect what I've got, that goes away.
And it's not only about creating a new paradigm of abundance. It's also about putting a stop to all this harvesting, because that kind of adds to the so-called lack.
You made an interesting comment yesterday about animals having to go and say, "Well, I'm sorry." I even commented on my video that's up for today about that. The bird says, "Well, I'm sorry, I can't build a nest for you because the permit wasn't granted."
Yeah. Well, actually, that relates perfectly to what I'm talking about when it comes to harvesting. So it's not just this, this perception of lack that makes us compete with each other. But it's also, you've got this system that it's almost like a vulture on our energy, where it harvests our energy through things like licensing, through things like, sorry, my kids are still up, can you believe it? Through things like licensing, through things like fees, road tolls, all that sort of thing. You're going to have to edit this. Hang on.
Gotta love those kids.
Oh my God,
Rena, we can leave it in. It's okay.
We can leave it in there.
It's the real thing.
Oh yeah, okay, leave it in there then. Not the yelling though. I think I muted out. Boys,
yes, you did mute out your words.
Yeah, they yell back. Moving. Yeah.
So
those kids are wonderful, and they're being raised in a really free way. These kids are really independent and they think for themselves, and they're way ahead of their years compared to most other kids. I can tell you that much. So we talk about the hierarchy and stuff like that. Well, you don't find that at Rena's. Sometimes she has to shout at them, but that's because they shout right back. But, there's a lot of freedom and unrestricted living going on at that place.
Well, I recall I asked Nicholas to do something. I can't remember what it was now. And he said, "Oh, well, you can't tell me what to do." And I said, "Excuse me?" He said, "Well, you can't tell me what to do. You're not my creator." I said, "Well, actually, technically I am." So we've got a little bit of that going on. At least he's asserting his authority as a divine creative being. But, so that can actually work against you. So, okay, so what I was saying about, is my audio okay? Because you're not coming through the headphones anymore for some reason. This happens every now and then.
No, you're clear on this end.
Yes, you're clear on
Okay, cool. So what I was saying about, how you were talking about the birds in the nest, right? Now, we're supposedly the most intelligent species, right? But how intelligent are we? We're the only species on the whole planet, supposedly the most intelligent one, that actually pays to live here, right? Yeah. So, and that's what I was talking about when I was saying about, the bird. Imagine the bird said, "I'm sorry, I can't go catch you a worm today because I don't have a flying license, or I don't have a license to collect twigs to make a nest, or I can't afford the air toll, to go to where I need to go to get you the twigs to make a nest for you." I mean, the insanity of that we actually have to pay a license to ask for permission to go from one place on our planet to another, or that we have to pay someone who suddenly says, "I own this road," Well, do you own the earth that you built the road on? You know, we're all caretakers here.
Yep.
And that's what we all have to come to terms with and really understand. And you can understand that just by looking at nature. All you have to do.
We belong to the earth. The earth doesn't belong to us. We belong to the earth. The earth grows us like it grows trees, you know. The earth grows humans, not the other way around.
Without us. You know, the earth would thrive without us. The earth doesn't need us. You know, the earth will do perfectly fine without us. It doesn't need us. We need the earth. And that's the thing I think that we all forget. But, you know, aside from, you know, the intellectual argument about this, aside from that, you know, we've just got to start treating each other like human beings, you know, and the current system that we've got, we've just got to say does not serve us anymore. It really is as simple as that. The existing system that we have, the system of government, no longer serves humanity. And it really is as simple as that.
It's the authority. It's not just the lack consciousness. It's the authority consciousness. We don't give ourselves our own authority. We give it to somebody else, and we see those others as the authority figures. And as long as we do that, we will continue to create the same mess that we're in now, that we're trying so hard to extricate ourselves from.
Yeah, well, it begins with
absolutely. And I was having a conversation with someone. Sorry, I can't hear you guys too well either now because the volume's gone on. Yeah, anyway. You know, I was having a conversation. I was talking about going to the Human Rights Commission and actually saying to them, you know, you guys have to really stand by what it is that you're espousing, that you're, you know, going to protect human rights. And one of your goals is to ensure that that happens not only in Australia, but one of your goals is to educate everyone about their rights, about their human rights. And, you know, I'm kind of half expecting for them to say, well, you know, on what authority are you going to make this demand? Or on what authority are you going to, you know, ask that we do this or put pressure on the government or do whatever, right? Well, I am the authority. I'm human. Am I not? Don't I automatically qualify? I breathe. I qualify. I am the authority. You exist because I am human.
Aren't you the protector of human rights? I'm human. They're my rights.
Yeah, I need a piece of paper, though, you know, that says that I have the authority to do this, right?
Well, you know, I mean, you're sovereign because you breathe. You know, your heart beats, you breathe. Exactly. That qualifies you. That's it. You got rights because of that.
Yeah.
You know, it's just that simple. Everything has rights. We have to start treating each other with respect. We have to start treating nature with respect. But the problem is that, you know, it always comes back to the one equation for me. And I thought a lot about that when Rena mentioned in our radio show that we do together. She mentioned a quote by Sir Thomas More. I don't know if you remember quite how it goes, do you?
No, I can't remember. I know which one you're talking about, though.
Yeah, basically, he says that, you know, you punish the bad guys, but you're actually breeding them to punish them because it keeps you in power. And that's exactly how we get bred and how we get educated. We get educated and put into a system where we are torn and split, as I've so often said in my videos with Ron. We're set up against our own emotions and against our own feelings and thoughts, and we are split and we're at war with ourselves. So we live in a state of internal disorder. When you live in a state of internal disorder, you're likely to do strange things, psychopathic things, violent things, selfish things, bad things. That's what happens when you're in internal disorder, because you seek to go and find some sort of gratification or you find justification in hurting or harming someone outside of yourself or what they are doing to you. But it's your own internal disorder that you're dealing with. And so the only way, and it says it, you know, ordo ab chaos, you know, it says order out of chaos. And that's the type of order that these quote-unquote dark ones want to impose, because they keep you in a state of internal disorder. Therefore, you need to have external order imposed upon you. If you're not going to be a responsible driver and drive drunk and do 200 k's an hour in the back street, then you're going to need a policeman to police that. So we are bred and educated to be in a state of internal disorder, and that scarcity mirror, once again, plays a huge big part in that. And so what do you have when you have the opposite? When you have internal order, there is external freedom, because there needs to be no order imposed. And that's the one scenario now is where we're coming from, and the other scenario is where we have to get to. And again, we need to bridge there. We need to bit by bit become more self-aware, more self-responsible, more transparent in who we are to ourselves and to others. And that's what it's all about. The control system breeds internal disorder, so it can actually impose external control and maintain itself in that hierarchical controlling position. Whereas what we've got, and this goes right back to the King of Kings debate with Mr. Sugih and everything like that, because Mr. Sugih is talking about everybody being a king and a queen. And that's about enabling people to achieve this inner order, this inner peace, and inner self-respect and self-love that then reflects back out into everybody that you meet and interact with in the world. And to do that, to be able to do that, is to be a king. And that's why he's the King of Kings. He's not only bred in the genetics, and, you know, all the documents are out there now, the Asian history of banking, etc. But that's how he is. Okay, the guy, we've sat at his table, and, you know, he is in internal order, and he is at peace, you know, and he projects that, and you can sense that. There's a calmness and a peace there, and a self-knowledge and a self-understanding that just grabs you at the core of your heart. It makes you see, that's what a king is really like, and that is what I essentially am. And if I'm humble in my service to other people, that's what I'll make them see as well. They are. We are all kings and queens. It's just a matter of going to our own natural internal order so that we don't have to have external enforcement imposed upon us by an elite.
Yeah, actually, I don't know. Does anybody remember exactly what time we started? I didn't even take a mental note of it.
No, and there's no time, no clock ticking to indicate.
No, I don't know either. I think it's not been I don't think it's been an hour yet.
No.
No, it's
so we're good.
It's probably been about 40 minutes, 35 minutes, something like that.
Oh, I think it's been longer than that, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. One of the things that I wanted to come back to, a few days ago, I did a video on common law grand juries. And there's an organization out of New York that is spearheading this. Well, I was informed that there's another organization doing the exact same thing in the United States, of creating these common law grand juries that has a different name than the other organization. And I says, why don't the two of you get together? And the one person says, well, I tried to get together with them, but they don't want us to. They want to do their own thing because they're making money off of what they're doing, and they don't want to share any of the resources that are coming in to accomplish the goal. Here's two organizations, and I think there's actually more than two, but two that I'm aware of that are doing the exact same thing. The intent is exactly the same, and they're competing with each other on the same project.
That's the thing. There we can get back to scarcity and competition once again, and that's what's keeping us divided.
But it's not just about that. It's also about this thing of self-governance. And I'll give you an example. See, we have to take responsibility for what we've created. We've created this, right? Yeah. Now, part of self-governance is not the ability to say, I don't want to do this because I don't want to do this, okay? That is not what self-governance is. No one can tell me what to do. That is not what self-governance is. So let's take, for instance, and I'll give you a practical example about what I mean by taking responsibility for what we've created. And knowing that self-governance is more than just establishing your rights, whether it be as a human being, as a spiritual being, whatever. And the example I'm going to give is this. One of the forms of harvesting is the harvesting of your energy. Because remember, the currency that we use is actually it is representative of the energy that we expend. So by harvesting our money, they're actually harvesting our energy. That is our sweat equity, right? So when we pay to renew, say, a driver's license, for instance, that is harvesting of energy. But you could say that, you know, the other side of that coin is that sorry. So the other side of that coin is that you guys are loving this, aren't you? See, you're lucky you've got your daughter to look after your grandkids, Ron.
Well, they're in school now. She left about a half an hour ago.
Okay. So, but you can say that, you know, the vehicle license fee is necessary because a record of who is driving the vehicle needs to be maintained, because if you're in an accident, then we need to be able to identify you and we need to make you accountable for what you've done, right? So how many people, and there's some people, I know for me, my car's been hit in a car park and this person has just walked off. You know, they've hit my car in a car park and they've just walked off. So what does that say? You know, do we need a system? Are we responsible enough to take the responsibility of self-governance? Or do we need these systems in place that, by the way, we ourselves have created? We must take responsibility for what we've created. Because if we don't want that system, then we need to start taking responsibility. It's not about just doing what you want to do, you know, and being free to do what you want to do. It's also about taking responsibility. And so if we're not going to take responsibility, then why should the licensing system be taken away? Can we be trusted to do the right thing and own up to it and say, I did this, I'm so sorry, how can I compensate for it? Or how can I fix it?
Yep.
So that system is necessary. But in order for that to happen, and for this system of harvesting that attaches itself to it, because we're giving it a great excuse for it to happen, because we're not taking responsibility.
Yep, that's right. And if we look at the hybrid,
that also feeds into what we're doing now. This isn't just my job. It's not just Peter's job. It's not your job, Ron. It is everyone's job. This is everyone's responsibility. This is not my responsibility. This is not Peter's responsibility. It's not the delegation's responsibility. It's not the responsibility of the rest of the 900 people, almost 900 people that are working on this project. All the people in the Saria, all the people in St. Germain's, all the people in the, you know, the reevaluation, the RV, all that. It's not only their responsibility. And that comes back to the group that you were talking about.
Yeah, but you can take the harvesting out of it, and that's what the hybrid is all about. Okay, you've got that vehicle. You've got that vehicle under the system we're proposing. You will be doing your own banking. You will have your own stuff in your own trust, so your own registry. So you don't pay anybody to register your vehicle. You just do it in your own trust. Okay, your own trust is registrable on the banking side of what the Solutions Hub would be. So you would have you'd be your own bank, and you would interact directly with other people, and you'd do your own registration. You'd give out your own travel authority. You would register your own vehicle. Why shouldn't you register your own vehicle? You own it. You should register it. So already we're taking the harvesting out of it. Yeah. But there's still an accountability there that if people do make a hit and run and people get the plates or whatever it is, and you can make your own plates, you can make them pretty as long as they're legible or something like that, you know. And those details will have to be worked out by larger groups than just us, you know. But so there is still an accountability there in terms of a common law court too. You know, ideally when I got on board with this, I was still naive enough to think that everything should just, you know, just go and everything should just be free. And, there have been several occurrences since with, road rage and bad behaviour in traffic and, people throwing half-full drink cans out of speeding cars at my wife and child for no reason. Little things like that made me think, well, hang on a minute. We're not there yet, and we have to find a way across. So let's take the oppression out of it. Let's take the harvesting out of it, and let's start on that road.
Yeah,
I don't think I'm 100% ready. Let me put it that way.
I know I'm not.
I know. Yeah. So let's all start on that road together. Let's just walk through the door. Let's just make sure that we grab the hammer and chisel and punch a great big hole in the prison wall and let's walk through hand in hand, because we've been in the dark and in the cage for a long, long time. And it's going to take us collectively holding hands, standing shoulder to shoulder, encouraging each other to walk out into the sunlight, to go through that shock of actually walking out into freedom, into the sunlight, and we're still a little bit Pavlov's dog, we've been so conditioned not to move even though the electric shock is not there anymore. And that's the process. That's the process that we're going through, and we need to do that together. And that's why, again, I say we're not prescribing anything. We're just trying to lift the restrictions and make things a little bit fairer for everyone.
Exactly, and that paradigm leap, that quantum jump that so many people want to happen tomorrow, from 3D to 5D, or from the system that we have now to this, idyllic, system. It can't happen for lots of reasons, and the other reason is that, look, even in a lot of people talk about the elite, or the 99% and the 1%. Even in the 99%, they're psychopaths, okay? So if you say that you're going to take the psychopaths who are in the 1% out of the picture so that this world can be a better place, and then you give the 99% absolute abundance in this current environment, all you're going to do is is fund the psychopaths that are in the 99%, because the only difference between the psychopaths in the 1% and the 99% is resources.
Being successful or having a good start. Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of psychopaths who are out in the street, pimps.
So you're going to get rid of one, but you're going to create another one that's going to quickly replace it.
Yeah, so we need to move slowly and carefully, and that's what this is all about moving slowly and carefully and putting processes into place that all enable all of us together, not Swiss Indo as the new government or anything like that. And the King of Kings, well, he's a King of Kings because he knows how to rule himself internally, and we're all growing up to become kings and queens, learning how to rule ourselves internally, so we do not need the external hand to put us in our place anymore, because we know how to do that internally without any external enforcement whatsoever. And that's what our birthright is, and that's what growing up spiritually means. It just means that, come on, folks, it's not hard, Do no harm, cause no loss, don't impede the freedom of another. And the fourth contract rule, do as you say you will do. Really, is there anybody on this planet who deep down in their hearts of hearts doesn't know that to be the basic rules to live by? It's not hard. It's not complicated. They've made it so hard and so complicated and overcomplicated. But these basic ways, these basic rules, they're written inside our souls, and they're written even in our DNA. Even animals and nature know that. Animals are not cruel, Animals hunt and we all live on each other because we're all part of the cycle of life, but we don't do it in cruelty. It's only the distorted human mind that goes into cruelty. But in our hearts, we all know how to live. And it's just setting up the system to gently remind ourselves and enable us to live like that is what is at stake here, what is happening here.
Well, I want to thank both of you. I think we're probably close to an hour now, or somewhere in that vicinity.
I'd say so.
And I think we're going to make this the video for tomorrow. And I have never watched one of my own recorded videos, so this will be the first time that I will have actually watched one of my own. But I want to thank you, Peter, and thank you, Rena, for I honestly believe that if some of the critics choose to listen to this one all the way through, they will be given a totally different take on what we're all about. Something that I haven't alone been able to portray to the audience that listens to my videos. And you have enhanced a great deal what I've been trying to do. And I will continue to talk to you and to other delegates as time goes on so that people can get a clearer and clearer picture of where we're going and of what the vision is and what the intent is, as Rena said. It's all about the intent to make a world that works for everybody. And it's a process, it's not a product.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Exactly.
It is a process. That's a beautiful way of putting it, Ron. It is a process, and it's a process that we all are going to have to do together. That's the three of us here and the 7.2 billion out there. We're going to all have to do this together. And like I said before, in our hearts, we all know what's right. It's just that simple.
Well, thank you both. You have a beautiful evening. Thank you for taking time to do this, and we'll communicate again soon. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Ron.
you, Ron.
Namaste.
Thank you, Peter.
Namaste in Lakesh.
Namaste.
Bye-bye.
No, I should say terima kasih.
Terima kasih, yeah.